I never thought I'd live to see it, but one morning I walked out onto my porch with a cup of coffee in my hand and found a yacht bigger than my house easing up to my grandfather's dock like it already owned the place. Men in suits stepped off a lawyer holding papers that said the dock, my dock, was no longer mine. Just like that, the heart of my family's history had been reduced to a line in some HOA filing, and that was only the beginning of the nightmare. I should probably start from the top. My name's Cole Mercer. I live on the ridge above Lake Michigan in a cabin my grandfather built with his bare hands. That dock they tried to steal, it wasn't just wood and nails. It was the place I learned to tie knots to fish to dive into freezing water with my teeth aching from the shock. My grandfather used to tell me the lake takes what you don't hold on to. He meant more than just the waves. He meant legacy. He meant family. And I've carried those words every day since he died. For decades, life here was quiet. Neighbors waved from their porches, gulls wheeled overhead, storms came and went. Then came the HOA Sable Ridge Homeowners Association run by a woman named Malene Cross. Imagine the perfect storm of entitlement, a scarlet raincoat, platinum hair sprayed stiff, a smile sharp as a knife. She used to be a land acquisition consultant, which is just a fancy way of saying she made a living prying land away from families who didn't want to sell. When she became HOA president, this ridge turned from peaceful to poisoned. It started with a letter, polite, menacing, embossed in blue ink. According to her, my dock was out of compliance with safety codes, a hazard, an eyesore. I read it once, then fed it to the stove. When the second letter arrived with photos of my boathouse circled in red like some schoolteacher grading homework, I laughed, tore it in half, and poured a whiskey. But I didn't laugh when I woke one morning to the sound of hammers. A crew in neon vests was pounding survey flags into my land, bright yellow lies fluttering in the wind. New easement lines, they said, orders from the HOA. I stood there silent, fists clenched, wanting to rip every flag out, burn them in a pile, but I didn't. I knew bait when I saw it. I called my sister Paige, who works at the county recorder's office. She dug into the filings and found something rotten, some shell company no one had ever heard of, conveniently tied to Malene. The map they'd filed sliced 50 feet off my property, including my dock. It wasn't an error, it was theft. Then, one afternoon, she came herself. Malene Cross striding down my grandfather's dock in that red raincoat flanked by lawyers and hired muscle. She smiled like she was greeting an old friend, then told me flat out, "This isn't personal, it's progress. Cooperate, and you'll be compensated." I said 5 words that wiped the smile right off her face. "This dock isn't for sale." She leaned closer, voice like ice. "Everything is for sale." That night, sitting in my dark cabin, I felt something I hadn't in years. Doubt. What if I was wrong? What if everyone else was right, that my dock was just an outdated hazard? Some neighbors had already sided with her, believing her talk about community improvements and parks. I caught myself thinking, maybe I should give up, maybe it's not worth the fight. I poured another drink and stared at the flags outside snapping in the wind like tiny victory banners. For a few moments I felt small, alone, powerless. But then Paige called back. She'd found the original plat map my grandfather filed in 1952, complete with his hand-drawn lines and the county surveyor's signature. Real proof. And Tess, my neighbor, showed up with a toolbox and the kind of stubborn fire that reminded me of Grandpa. Together we turned my garage into a fortress, cameras on every corner, floodlights wired to switches, a drone with a spotlight so bright it turned night into noon, even my grandfather's old diesel winch hooked to the gate. Power, then eyes, then teeth, Tess said, labeling the controls. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't just being pushed around. I was ready. The storm came first wind, lashing rain hammering like machine gun fire on the roof. Then came the trucks. Black SUVs crawling up the county road lights killed engines growling. Men with bolt cutters, a realtor soaked to the skin suits carrying tablets with my dock highlighted in red. I flipped the switch. Floodlights blazed, the drone rose into the sky, and the horn screamed across the cove. My voice rolled out through the loudspeaker. You are trespassing. Your actions are being recorded and broadcast live. They froze in the white glare, cursing, stumbling. Then they regrouped. One guard lifted bolt cutters to the gate. Another fired 2 shots at my siren sparks raining down. Finally, they hooked a truck to the iron post's engine, screaming as it tried to rip my grandfather's gate from the earth. But when I fired up the diesel winch, the cable hummed taut, anchoring the gate like it had roots in bedrock. The truck spun uselessly in the mud tires, screaming water spraying high. A dual horsepower against Legacy, and Legacy won. That's when she appeared. Malene Cross, stepping out of her SUV with a black umbrella, hair plastered by rain, eyes blazing. She walked into the floodlight like a general inspecting conquered ground. Her men closed ranks, but she didn't flinch. She pointed at me, her voice slicing through thunder. "This land isn't yours anymore. The easement is official. You're finished. Walk away now, and I'll even cut you a check. $5,000. $5,000 for a ridge worth millions for my family's heartbeat." I almost laughed. Instead, I told her calm and steady, "My land is not for sale." Her mask cracked. The smirk turned into a snarl. "You have nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing. The law is on my side. The money is on my side. You cannot win." One of her guards unfastened the strap on his holster hand, twitching near the pistol. For a heartbeat, I thought it might end right there in gunfire and mud. But I had my own weapon. I stepped forward into the storm, carrying an old metal case. Rain poured down my back as I set it on their truck hood and unrolled the vellum map inside a 60-year-old plat hand-drawn by my grandfather. I slapped one of their fake pink flags onto it and pointed. "This is where your fraudulent survey line falls. 50 feet inside my property. A felony. And my sister scanned it the moment you filed it. She's already on the phone with the sheriff." For the first time, I saw real fear in Malene's eyes. Her investors shifted uneasily. Her lawyers looked pale. Her guards glanced at each other like maybe they'd signed up for the wrong job. And then, like an answer from the storm itself, headlights appeared on the switchback road. Engines, heavy ones. The sheriff's convoy grinding up the hill. Her investors broke first, stumbling forward with their hands up, shouting over the rain. "We didn't know. She handled the filings. We thought it was legal." The guards started backing off too, one even lifting his hands in surrender. Only Malene stood her ground, soaked and furious, screaming. "You think you've won? I have the permits. The capital to men. This isn't over." But it was. The deputies stepped into the floodlights, voices calm, commanding sheriff's department hands where we can see them. Deputy Miller, a man I'd known since childhood, looked at the scene. The chained gate, the casings on the ground, the fraudulent map in the rain, and nodded once. "We got it," he said. Then he pulled out cuffs, the metallic snap loud even under thunder. "Malene Cross, you are under arrest for conspiracy, filing false documents, criminal trespass, and attempted illegal eviction." She shrieked, tried to twist away, still spitting threats. "This isn't over. You don't know who you're dealing with." But the storm swallowed her words. The deputies led her down the muddy path, her red coat plastered to her skin, her umbrella abandoned in the dirt. Just hours before, she'd strutted onto my dock like a queen. Now, she was just another trespasser in cuffs, dragged off into the night. And I stood there in the rain, hand resting on my grandfather's map, the floodlights glaring across the wrecked yard, knowing one thing with absolute certainty. They thought paperwork and intimidation could erase a legacy. They thought a man alone couldn't stand against them, but tonight proved otherwise. Some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost.